All through the night last night, lawyers for the convicted murderer Robert Alton Harris argued that the gas chamber is such a barbaric form of execution that the Constitution forbids it. That overnight process itself of last-minute legal appeals and reversals seemed pretty barbaric to some people itself. At one point, Harris was actually locked in the chamber and strapped in the chair when a judge said, "Wait." Ultimately, the Supreme Court said no, and Harris was executed. Debate about the death penalty goes on. First at San Quentin Prison in California, Ken Kashiwahara.
Outside San Quentin this morning, protesters ended their vigil for Robert Harris, vowing to continue their battle against the death penalty. The father of one of Harris's victims ended his vigil, too.
I'm satisfied that Harris has been punished for the crime that he committed.
The final battle over Harris's execution was an all-night cross-country duel by telephone and fax machine between two federal courts. 6 hours before Harris was scheduled to die, an appeals court judge in San Francisco issued a stay of execution based on a claim that Harris's brother, who was also at the murder scene, may have fired the first shot. Even before the U.S. Supreme Court could rule on that, the appeals court issued another stay of execution based on Harris's contention that the gas chamber is cruel and unusual punishment. When the Supreme Court overturned the first stay and began considering the second, the appeals court issued a third. 3 hours after the execution was to take place, the High Court acted on the remaining issues.
We just got word that the United States Supreme Court vacated both stays.
Eyewitnesses were put on buses and taken to the gas chamber. Harris was strapped in. 2 minutes later, another delay.
Oh, we're getting an incredible word right now. It is not an execution. There is another stay.
A fourth stay of execution from the appeals court phoned in to the gas chamber.
We heard the phone ring. One of the families of the victims was heard to say, "Oh, God."
It was the most macabre experience of my life. The whole thing had a kind of a dreamlike quality to it.
He didn't appear to show any sort of real change in expression when they suddenly came in and unstrapped him and took him out.
Finally, in an extraordinary move, the Supreme Court not only ordered the execution to proceed, but told lower courts to stop granting postponements. Harris was strapped into the gas chamber again.
He just looked worn out. There was absolutely no struggle of any type.
Harris was pronounced dead 12 hours after the first stay of execution had been granted. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, San Francisco.
The justices of the Supreme Court used unusually strong language in rejecting appeals from Mr. Harris's lawyers. One unsigned opinion called them abusive, a last-minute attempt to manipulate the legal process, something the court clearly wants to stop. Here's our law correspondent, Tim O'Brien.
Since the Supreme Court reinstated capital punishment in 1976, the number of death row inmates has swelled to more than 2,500, but there have only been 169 executions. Critics blame endless opportunities for appeal. No one quarrels with the right to directly appeal the conduct of a trial in state courts. The alleged abuse occurs later in federal court, where inmates challenge the constitutionality of their convictions over and over again under what's called habeas corpus. Limiting federal appeals has been a central theme of the Reagan and Bush administrations and the justices they appointed to the Supreme Court.
Well, I think the Harris case is a textbook example of what's wrong with the system.
And today, the Attorney General called on Congress to limit state prisoners to just one appeal in federal court.
One petition, the state will pay for skilled counsel, you will have a time limit in which to bring that first petition, and you will have the obligation to bring all your claims as part of that petition.
Subsequent appeals would be allowed only if the inmate is trying to show he's innocent, rather than challenging legal technicalities. It would surely streamline capital punishment, but critics fear it could also produce tragic mistakes.
The track record in these cases, when they are reviewed, suggests that there is a significant risk that there will be serious constitutional violations.
The long-range impact of the Harris case may be to fuel debate on how to make the system not just swifter, but also better. Tim O'Brien, ABC News at the Supreme Court.
In our next segment, the abortion battle and why so many Japanese women choose abortion. In other news, Minnesota chooses universal health insurance, and on the American agenda tonight, giving teenage defenders a jury of their peers.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Brought to you by Jeep.
On November 11th, 1940, a legend was born in Toledo, Ohio. Jeep. Jeep earned its stripes before most of us were out of knickers. Tough, unstoppable, go anywhere, get the job done.
But I'll lay odds, a lot of people don't know that Jeep is part of Chrysler. So now it's our job to keep the legend alive. And this is where we'll do it.
Our new billion-dollar assembly plant in Detroit, Michigan.
Before the first Jeep came down the line, our workers had the most intensive quality training in the history of Chrysler. And this is a new Jeep Grand Cherokee, a lot more room inside, and the only sport utility with four-wheel analog brakes and a driver's airbag standard. Every inch a Jeep. To some people, Jeep is for climbing to the top of the world or just going out on the town. To us, Jeep is what all four-wheel drives are measured against. Always will be. Hey, in this business, you lead, follow, or get out of the way.
In Buffalo, New York today, demonstrators for and against abortion rights faced off again in front of several abortion clinics. The group Operation Rescue plans 2 to 4 weeks of protest in Buffalo in an attempt to shut down the clinics. There was a lot of shouting today, and the clinics stayed open. In the United States, the abortion argument is waged on many levels. Is it the taking of a human life, or has life not yet been formed when most abortions occur? Shouldn't women, rather than the state, have control of their own bodies? The debate is similar, but also different in other countries. ABC's Bill Rediker reports tonight on the status of abortion in Japan.
At Hase Temple in Kamakura, parents pray for the souls of the fetuses they have aborted. Although Buddhism is not as critical of abortion as some Western religions, the people who come here buy Mizuko Jizo, statues of childlike gods to appease the spirits. In all, the temple sells 10,000 memorial statues a year. Japan has one of the highest abortion rates in the industrialized world. Nearly 1 out of every 3 pregnancies is terminated, and it is legal up to 5.5 months into a pregnancy. Abortion is widespread here, chiefly because the Japanese government bans the use of the pill to control conception. That's because Japan's Ministry of Health and Welfare says the pill would discourage the use of condoms, lead to increased promiscuity, and an epidemic of AIDS. That's what the government says. The Japan Family Planning Association believes there is another reason for the ban. Japan's government is concerned about the country's declining birth rate.
The government seems to be worried about declining fertility. The fertility gets much lower with the license of the pill.
Whatever the reason, many Japanese women feel cheated, denied the right to use the easiest form of contraception.
They should let the people decide what's good for them instead of just, using government control.
But the Japanese government recently reconfirmed its ban against the pill. Abortion will continue to be one of the most prevalent means of birth control in Japan. Bill Rediker, ABC News, Tokyo.
With the cost of health care going through the roof and millions of Americans unable to afford insurance, the state of Minnesota has decided to act. The state government calls its plan Health Right, and the name says it all. Here's ABC's George Strait.
There being 70 ayes and 64 nays, the bill is passed.
Savoring the victory most was the legislator from rural Minnesota who led the fight, Paul Ogren.
Hopefully this is the end of a war and the beginning of a commitment.
The plan offers health insurance to the 370,000 Minnesotans who now are uninsured, the unemployed and working families who earn less than $37,000 a year. Depending on how much they earn, adults who choose to join the plan pay part of the premium for a policy that covers basic medical care. There is a $10,000 a year limit on hospital stays, but children are treated for free. Before the bill passed, the arguments touched on all of the issues at the heart of the national debate on health care.
Make no mistake about it. This is one of the first steps we're taking to socialize medicine in this state.
I am not convinced at all that government can do a good job of running the health care system.
Others complained the bill doesn't go far enough. It's not mandatory and does not provide long-term care. but they believe it's a good step and offered Ogren their support.
I want you to know you got my vote on health right if it comes back without the surtax.
Thank you, Becky. It will, and I'll need your vote desperately.
Ogren needed the help to overcome the 250,000 letters opposing the bill sent by the medical, legal, and insurance industries. In the halls, lobbyists literally blocked his way.
Yeah. Like Tracy, I talked to you on the phone last
Great.
week.
Walk with me.
Okay, that's fine.
Everybody that benefits financially from the current health care system collaboratively tried to kill this legislation.
Doctors and hospitals were most upset with the 2% tax they will have to pay. That, along with a cigarette tax, will fund the $300 million program. Doctors wanted a special income tax on everyone.
We think that we have been selected out to bear a burden that the entire society should be paying for. So if you call that being picked on, yes, we're being picked on.
Besides insuring the uninsured, this plan tries to contain skyrocketing health care costs by focusing on prevention and regulating the amount of new technology doctors and hospitals can purchase. Universal health care plans similar to the one here in Minnesota are being debated or close to passage in a dozen other states. It's a measure of how concerned Americans are about this issue, and a clear sign that any answers are more likely to come from states than the federal government. As good as the Minnesota plan might be, the authors say it is not necessarily a national model for health care reform, but it is a model for how much effort it takes to get even a first step passed. George Strait, ABC News, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Well, this may not be the scientific breakthrough of the century, but anyone who discovers the secret of staying thin can certainly command a lot of attention in this country, and researchers in Japan say they have done it. Found a substance derived from cholesterol which blocks the body's ability to absorb and store fat. It has already worked in laboratory animals and may be ready for humans in a couple of years. We'll be back in just a moment.
I tried it and I feel great.
Grape-Nuts Try It for a Week is your week to discover.
Breakfast with Grape-Nuts cereal helps keep me going all morning.
And it's really delicious. Try Grape-Nuts, the fat-free natural energy source. See how good you feel.
Grape-Nuts has this natural, hearty taste. There's nothing quite like it.
And don't miss the valuable Grape-Nuts coupon in this Sunday's paper.
Try it for a week and see how good you feel all morning.
Post Grape-Nuts cereal. Try it for a week.
You've just got to try it.
I was tossing and turning.
In medical tests, people fell asleep faster and slept better with Unisom than without.
Now I'm sleeping and sleeping.
Unisom for faster, better sleep.
Nighttime, one of the worst times for pain. That's why you need new Ultra Strength Bengay with more pain relievers than we've ever had. Fast relief for muscle aches and minor arthritis pain. With new Ultra Strength Bengay, you can say goodnight to your pain.
With a luxury car like the new J30 from Infiniti, you may be expected to drive with a certain decorum in public. What you do behind closed doors, however, is your own business. The new Infiniti J30 makes you want to take up driving again, doesn't it?
A racial discrimination suit filed against the FBI by hundreds of its black employees has been settled out of court. The FBI admitted there were what it euphemistically called disparities in the way it treated its black agents and its white ones, and the FBI has agreed to pay for its prejudice. Here's ABC's Walter Rogers.
The FBI agreed to promote 6 black agents to supervisors and give 80 others promotions, transfers, or special training. Some of the more than 300 black agents who sued will divide more than $100,000 in back pay and bonuses. Still, the FBI refused to acknowledge it broke the law.
I don't see what I would consider indications of racial discrimination. I do see disparities. I do see some anomalies.
Liz Cassell, whose face cannot be shown because she works in foreign counterintelligence, is a black agent denied promotion 3 times.
I think it would be great if they would admit, yes, the system did discriminate, but yes, we're changing it. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Less than 5% of the 10,000 FBI agents are black, and most joined the class action suit, which also charged the FBI with disciplining black agents more frequently than whites.
It's going to result in dramatic changes in the way they're going to do business in the future. It also provides for substantial relief to people who have been affected adversely.
This case has been a political minefield for the FBI because President Bush opposes racial quotas. The Bureau says these are not quotas, but retroactive relief for blacks. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Washington.
In other news, American Airlines has twisted the screws a little tighter on the competition for the second time in as many weeks. American said it was cutting its fares and making it easier to travel at a discount. Good news for most travelers for now. But it could also mean trouble in the long run for an already very troubled industry. Here's ABC's Stephen Ogg.
American Airlines continues to push the airline industry into restructuring its fares. It has matched any attempt by its competitors to offer new discounts. What American did was create just 4 fares, down from as many as 16. The new fares are generally a lot lower than the old ones, and discount fares can be bought just 7 days before you plan to travel.
In the short term, it'll be of substantial benefit to people who are traveling. In the longer term, I expect it to be the death knell of a number of the weaker carriers.
Some people suggest American is trying to eliminate the weakest competitors, TWA, America West, and Continental. American airline officials deny it. Meanwhile, one result of the fare changes is that more people are traveling.
In business, it'll probably allow me and my staff to get out and do more selling and get to see our customers more often. On a personal basis, maybe we'll get to go to Disneyland this year.
I would not have gone if the fares were not that low. No, I would have stayed here.
With fares so low, virtually all the airlines are going to lose money for a while. But if some go out of business, the few survivors could then simply raise fares and keep them up. Stephen Ogg, ABC News, Washington.
On Wall Street today, all the airline stocks were down. The Dow Jones Industrials gained, on the other hand, nearly 7 points to close at 33.43, and the trading was heavy. When we come back, Israel's new sales pitch to lure settlers to the West Bank.
People loved the old type of granola because it was loaded with great taste. They didn't know it was also loaded with fat. Introducing a new type of granola. New Kellogg's low-fat granola for the new granola type. All the delicious whole grains, almonds, and raisins you love, but only half the fat of leading granolas. So if you like the great taste of granola, but don't want all the fat, try new Kellogg's low-fat granola. Great taste, half the fat.
An important message for patients taking Cardizem SR.
I need a refill on my Cardizem SR.
You may want to see your doctor before your next refill, because there's a new Cardizem available, Cardizem CD.
What's the difference?
Cardizem CD should save you money, and it contains the same medication as Cardizem SR.
Can you give me Cardizem CD?
Only your doctor can change your prescription. Ask your doctor if new Cardizem CD is right for you.
Cardizem CD. Thanks. I'll ask my doctor.
Stay within the lines. The lines are our friends. Stay within. Stay within the lines. The lines are our friends.
Introducing the world's first V6 crayon.
Are you listening?
The Isuzu Rodeo, built to go way outside the lines.
How many times I told my dad to see a doctor. He was stubborn. But the pain in his stomach just wouldn't go away. He had to go. You should have seen the relief on his face when the doctor said Mylanta. He said it was indigestion, and his kind of indigestion needed strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Overseas today, the election campaign in Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir spent the day campaigning in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, trying to reassure Jewish settlers there that Israel will never give up the territory. The ruling Likud party is also stepping up its efforts to convince Jews living in Israel proper that the occupied territories are the place to be. Here's ABC's Dean Reynolds.
Several busloads of prospective Israeli homebuyers took a real estate tour today in the occupied West Bank, passing right through the Palestinian city of Ramallah en route to a nearby Jewish settlement. Their tour, paid for by the government, is part of a major settlement drive triggered by two things: Fears that the June 23rd Israeli elections could result in a government less committed to Jewish settlements than this one, and growing concern that thousands of homes out here have not been sold yet. Critics say the government spent more than $1 billion on settlements last year alone. Upbeat settlement commercials with plenty of happy families and no Palestinians are now airing on state-run television. Telephone banks have been set up to answer questions from those who may want to join the ranks of the settlers.
Well, it's the right time. It's the spring. I mean, the birds are singing, the flowers are blossoming, and people are looking for new places to live.
As well as selling homes, the ruling Likud party of Prime Minister Shamir is trying to sell the idea behind the settlements, that Jews must occupy this land to prevent it from becoming a Palestinian state. Today, a couple thousand more Israelis, including many new immigrants, were driven out to the West Bank for a political pep talk. The settlement salesmen and their government sponsors hope that by next year they will have doubled the Jewish population in the occupied territories from 100,000 to 200,000 people. And if that policy succeeds, this government will lock the next government into a settlement expansion program, whether it wants one or not. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
Still overseas, the battleground that was Yugoslavia, the city of Sarajevo, where their Winter Olympics were held 8 years ago, has become a real battleground. Sarajevo is the capital of the new nation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, a former Yugoslav republic. The Serbian minority there is fighting the Croats and Muslims to bring Bosnia back under Yugoslav control. What may have been a heavy hint today from Mikhail Gorbachev that he'd like to try for a political comeback. The former Soviet leader reminded a seminar in Tokyo that the French president, Charles de Gaulle, returned to power late in life. He was 68, says Mr. Gorbachev, and I'm only 61. When we come back, the American agenda, a jury of their peers for people much younger.
When you live away from it all, you don't see much TV or get many newspapers. So when you go out for the groceries, you don't make choices based on commercials or coupons. You choose based on facts. And of the 50 leading cereals, you'll find only one that's low in sugar and a good source of fiber and made from whole grain oats. Cheerios. Life isn't this simple everywhere, but choosing a cereal can be. Choose smart. Choose Cheerios.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
I try to ignore my sensitive teeth, but they hurt.
Don't ignore your sensitive teeth. Sensodyne helps stop the pain that can make you stop brushing. Could lead even to tooth loss.
Thanks, Sensodyne.
Sensodyne helps stop the pain and the domino effect.
For painful gas, which would you choose? Your antacid or Gas-X, the tablet made for gas? It's extra strength, 100% simethicone to fight gas faster. Faster than your antacid. Fight gas right with Gas-X.
Tonight on Nightline, talk radio hosts. They're loud, they're outrageous, they're entertaining, and they're steering America's political discussion. Tonight.
On the American agenda tonight, teenage court. Nearly every community in the country is now struggling to control the increase in juvenile crime. In 1990, more than 2 million teenagers were arrested, and a lot of them were repeat offenders. The sharpest increase is in the number of children committing violent crimes. And the court system is so clogged that those kids who commit lesser crimes are often let go without being punished, only to commit more serious crimes. How to teach them, while there is still time, about crime and punishment. Our agenda reporter is Rebecca Chase.
Mostly on Friday and Saturday night when they cruise the drag up here, get a lot of drag racing.
In the small town of Odessa, Texas, the majority of crimes are committed by juveniles.
Go ahead and pour it out and find a trash can for it.
But unlike other cities, Odessa gives first offenders a choice.
Are you familiar what teen court is?
Regular juvenile court or teen court.
There will be no chewing of gum in the courtroom.
Odessa's teen court was started nearly a decade ago by the Junior League and Natalie Rothstein, who wanted to turn around first offenders before they had a second brush with the law. Teen court gives young people a chance to clear their records.
You swear to tell the truth,
It only hears cases from those who plead guilty to misdemeanors, like shoplifting.
There was only one clerk, so we took him.
Or possession of marijuana.
Did they search your locker or your person?
Or drinking at school.
Would you say you was intoxicated?
Yes.
In most cities, these teenage crimes are dismissed with a warning. Here, they are taken seriously by other teenagers, who are the prosecutors, the defense attorneys, the jurors.
In this program, peer pressure is telling these kids that this law-breaking behavior is not acceptable to us, your peers. And this they listen to, and they hear it loud and clear.
Since 1983, 6,600 young people have been sentenced here in Odessa's teen court. Only 2% of them have ever broken the law again.
Have a seat right there.
A typical case, Corey, age 15, arrested for stealing 2 Nintendo games.
My friends wanted me to steal them, so I thought I'd impress them by stealing them.
You thought you'd impress them, huh?
Yes, sir.
Tough questions, tough closing arguments. First, the prosecutor.
He told y'all tonight that he stole Nintendo tapes to impress his friends. Why don't y'all let him impress them in a different way and give him lots of community service?
Then the defense.
As you deliberate, I'd like you to consider that he was pretty much given solitary confinement to his house, except to go to school for 1 complete month.
The jury can order someone to perform up to 30 hours of community service and to serve up to 4 times as a teen court juror.
We teen court jury.
Corey receives the maximum sentence.
They're extremely tough on theft offenses. They're extremely tough on any kind of alcohol or narcotics at school. I think teenagers are probably harder than adults would be, because adults are like, he's just a kid. He doesn't know any better than that. And the kids are like, well, we know better than that.
Despite the tough sentence, Corey and his mother are satisfied.
I think he deserved it, because it was really stupid what he did.
Corey will be able to clear his record once he does his time. 30 hours at the public library.
I learned my lesson from it, especially from, having to do the work.
Teenagers learn to be responsible for their actions. Community work gets done. The court system is unburdened of minor crimes without dismissing the criminal, and that sends an important message.
The first message is that laws are important and that they should be upheld, that young people have a role in both being law-abiding and seeing that the values of the community are enforced.
In Odessa and a dozen other cities that have followed this model, teen courts are proving that a teenager can be taught a lesson.
If you start drinking this young, you're going to end up like an alcoholic, and that's what Jennifer does not need.
Especially when the lesson comes from another teenager. Rebecca Chase, ABC News, Odessa, Texas.
And that's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
Tonight, Denise ties the knot.
A big step in a big hurry.
Nice of you to come in such short notice. Denise is not pregnant, by the way. And it's the big day with Sydney's best friend.
I think you should call her up and take her out.
And you wouldn't have any problem if I did that.
I've never done this on the first date.
She's great in bed.
Really?
Civil Wars tonight. Denise,
If you make it, they will come. If you like Frosted Flakes, try new Wheaties Honey Gold. If you make it, they will come. You'll discover the crispy flakes of corn and whole grain wheat that make it Wheaties and experience that delectable taste of golden honey that makes it Honey Gold. So if you like Frosted Flakes, try new Wheaties Honey Gold. Is this heaven?
No, it's breakfast.
New Wheaties Honey Gold, the sweet new choice for breakfast.
I want you to listen to me. I want you to cross at the corner and look both ways when you're running out there in the street. Because people today, they drive crazy and they will run right over you. And I don't want anything to happen to you because Daddy and I love you very much.
Today, the streets are even more dangerous than you think.
You like flying?